It's Friday, November 22nd, and this is a historical day of significance that I want to talk about. Today is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and it's an important day in my life. And I want to share it because I'm one of the people who was alive, and I can tell you exactly where I was and what I was doing when it happened. I was in third grade. I remember our teacher, Miss Janke, who I did not like, and this is the one day I did like her. Funny how events do that. We had just gotten done with recess, and she herded us all into not our usual classroom. So that right away, I knew something was weird. Herded the whole group into an empty classroom and told us that the president had just been shot. I don't remember if she told us if he was dead yet or not, but I remember the feeling. I can feel it now. It was like a light switch had been turned off. It was like the world had ended. Now, from my perspective as a little boy at that time, life was tough enough as it was. The scenario in Omaha, Nebraska for a black person, or for me anyway, was that it was de rigueur. It was the standard. Racism was the standard. Black people were regarded as niggers. We weren't regarded as citizens yet by a lot of people. And yet there were good people, and that was a big part of what was going on with me as a little boy. I'm trying to figure out everything out. I was trying to figure out who are the nice white people, because it was expected that white people were not going to be nice. And John Kennedy seemed like a nice white man. He also seemed like a man who, at the time, I'll speak of what I thought at the time and I'll think of what I think now. At the time, as a little boy, he did appear to be genuine. It appeared that he could be trusted, that he was going to do what he said. But again, I was just a boy. But I'll tell you what, that was the beginning of the formation of my worldview. I mean, it was formed before that, but that really was the nail in the coffin that definitely killed the American dream for me, which I already knew was never for me. But it completely wiped away the facade that, number one, that leaders are smart, they know what they're doing, that they care, and that they're doing things for the benefit of the people, like they always say. That was the beginning of me seeing that that's a lie. And it was just exacerbated by the deaths of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy. It was like, by the time they killed Martin Luther King, it was like, I'm done. You know, and the way that the world is now is as a result of that. I mean, it was happening way before that. The corruption and the wheel of power that continually grinds was already in play. But that was Kennedy's downfall. Was he said it publicly that we have no use for secret societies. You know, secrets hurt. He was calling the sons of bitches out, and they got him for it. I see. I'm playing the Beatles because in my life there's a direct connection between the death of John Kennedy and the Beatles. So John Kennedy was killed about this time November. I'll never forget this time, folks, and I'm sure you folks that lived through it won't either. It was the end of the world until the Beatles came along. What was it? February they showed up on Ed Sullivan. That was when the sun came out again for me and my brothers and sisters. We had lost something major. Kennedy was a sign of hope for many black people. I'll say it. For me, he was. And so when the Beatles came along, we just needed them. I'll speak as an American. We needed them so bad when the Beatles broke. We had been deprived of Kennedy, and we needed hope. And the music of the Beatles was all that. I just pulled a few albums just because, for me, the advent of the Beatles and the death of John F. Kennedy are linked in my DNA, in my head, those events are forever linked in my personal history. So I'm listening to Rubber Soul on CD because I don't have the vinyl anymore. So I wanted to share that my thoughts about that and how it dovetails into my view of things now. It to me, John Kennedy, that was their third attempt on him, and they got him. I'm not going to say who killed him because I don't really know. There's all this speculation. I do understand this: the liars who claim to have been representing America and progress in America are the people behind this, because it's always been about their benefit, their progress, their money, their party. It's still so obvious to me that the game is rigged, fixed, unfair, always has been. And I, for one, cannot take seriously almost any politician or publicly speaking person that talks about the way the things they are as though we're going to fix them. It's all bullshit and lies. To me, you could say that I'm being maybe cartoony or idealistic, but I do know that what I'm saying from my point of view is accurate, that the level of corruption in the world today, in how you do anything, is so horrendous that it's nearly impossible for anyone with solutions to actually activate them, because some asshole is going to make sure and fuck it up, because his main thing is, what's in it for me, and is this going to mess with what I got? That's all that's going on, it seems like to me. And just really JFK, the death, It's also why I look askance at the Bushes because of the CIA connection. And I can't prove anything, but he was murdered by his own. He was killed by the U.S., and CIA and FBI and NSA and all those people. I can't personally prove it, but, well, actually there are some things I do know from personal experience. The total corruption and darkness involved with those agencies, and in some ways how they are part of the hidden hand of, it's not even hidden, it's out in the open. They're an operating Gestapo of the American Nazi Party. I mean, I'm not an idiot. You can't tell me that almost anything that the government or people who have the wherewithal to do it have done anything that's for the benefit of the common man for a long time. I don't see it. And even if they have done it, they sure could have done it a whole lot better. Still can. It's not too late to turn this around. But that's, again, why I know I'm not talking much about music, but this is my channel. That's why I go on and on about politics, because I know it's an idealistic thing to say, but I think if leaders and people in power actually cared about changing anything, they would be saying so. I mean, people below them, it's interesting how I've been saying this forever, and now it's become more of the commentary, the general commentary. It's been so obvious to me for years, and now it's catching up because it's so bad, But people in power, if they really cared, you would hear, I think we would start to hear a change in the discussion, which is, and we are, but even up higher, where they're saying, okay, well, this really isn't working. We can't stay focused on keeping the status quo while we claim to be working towards solutions. Because as long as that's going on, the gathering attrition of Western society will go on. Being in denial about it, complaining about people like me saying things about it, saying that we're full of shit. won't change the reality of what's happening on this planet. For those that want to still be in denial and say everything's just fine or that we're crackpots because we say these things. That denial is destructive and dangerous. That's what I wanted to say today, mainly. And I wanted to tie it into the Beatles because Kennedy died, and I was a mess as a boy until the Beatles came along. I do remember that. I was very depressed. It was like the world had ended. I could go on and on and on. I could. I think I'll address one more question before I end here. Aphex Twin or something like that. Somebody that likes that. Aphex Twin asked me what I think about synthesizers and guitars. I'm not into cliche. That's the main thing I'll say. So any combination of instruments is good depending on who's using it. I'm not into cliche and commerciality and obvious stuff. That's why I'm not I have to do this. I have to talk about some commercial people. That's why I have never been a Nine Inch Nails fan, for one, or Marilyn Manson or bands like that. When I think about guitars and electronic music working, the first band I think of is the Young Gods from Switzerland, and I believe that's where they're from, Switzerland, where they sampled the guitars and never used a guitar until recently, acoustically. I thought it was brilliant. So, to me, it's not the combination of instruments that's the problem. The only problem ever is whose hands it's in.